side of Berlin. So yeah, and I was born in.
And the interesting thing that came out of like this morning's conversation, particularly talking to Chloe from RCA, how administration and quality process is a massive distraction, a massive waste of our energies. And if you did away that structure of education, then
little towns are more
up to do the stuff that matters. So yeah, I'll bring that in.
Fashion education. I don't know. Yeah, I think interestingly, my boyfriend is a professor in product design. And we have a lot of conversations about it. They're thinking about a kind of a local design master program. Because especially in more rural areas where community is somehow understood differently and closer, it has more consequences somehow. It is very interesting that students kind of reflect upon the community they're already in. But it's basically not so anonymous, like in a bigger town or something. I mean, for every application I did, how to attach to the community.
When did they release that?
How you doing?
I just discovered that on the scroll
Not me. How you doing?
question how to attach to the community because you basically can't engage them.
This is where I went to art school.
Yeah, formal.
Projects.
So, yeah.
She's going to probably have like a 1 minute delay on the live stream. You can send us questions.
I lived it when I dog walking.
They asked for me to send questions to me.
You'll present or you're going to put kind of presentation.
I'm a member. Perfect.
So it's kind of.
I don't know. I think
But
if you need your laptop,
my laptop.
everything
We're missing you.
when you get everything.
Fashion act now, yeah, but I live
A lot of great people here.
Anyway.
a slide.
I'd quite like to have a film of that, and I could send that as the Better Lives lecture.
Around.
Yeah.
It
wants PDF.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we don't.
Find
Probably
myself
was filmed, wasn't it?
Day to discuss.
Yeah.
And then say facilitate discussion.
Yeah, I didn't know about. I just received this one.
Maybe I will do that. Ask Renata if that's.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think these videos will be available in a bit, so.
I'm sure they will. It's a shame we're a long table, but
Yeah. For you.
not enough time to do anything about that now.
Let me have a look at the room quickly.
Because it came up on like a Google thing. I ticked, but it's
Also be an animated keynote.
Seating alternative.
on there.
That sounds really
There
cool.
was this came through and I
Yeah. Like,
Okay,
I
that's
just
fine.
received this file and I put it here. That's all I know.
That's what's me. And, being used. They revert and old. Yeah.
Well, sorry to interrupt your lunch.
Can be those. I'm sorry that I. Yeah, but I think it does. But anyway, that's fine.
I don't know where that is.
Opening up with laughter. It's so annoying to be half and half. If it's too complicated,
Yeah.
fine.
All right. Well, because you're listening, and then I will keep an eye on chat. Whether I can manage to do that during.
If I just leave, will I be able to hear if you leave it on?
No. I think we should end this call and then you just join the live stream. But we'll just use the text chat.
Yeah, if you have to go, you have to go, like, just be with them in the room, it's fine.
Yeah. Cool.
We can debrief after.
I had so many questions after your job.
Right, enjoy, have
See you
fun.
soon.
I know the people. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And can we put German language degree? When everybody's presented and we have a discussion.
What does it mean? Yeah, this is the word that
out of
so I kind of like spent some time there.
I think 100 years ago.
I mapped, at least I understood
Where's the computer? Oh, my
environment and landscape of
I thought it happened
reading and I tried to.
And
Yeah, I was like, yes.
recounting of Nan's university.
I was wondering whether it meant written
It
Chairs rather
I know
than
exactly what
I
you're saying.
Okay.
It really becomes very weird, especially with Cairo right now.
So
It's like
then
Canadian
Greece would go,
university.
right?
So, and then
Yeah, let's see if I
whatever
can
you
get
could
it.
name it. Every country has been talking about it.
Yeah, because you also need to do a little bit of reading around to be able to sort of knowledge.
Oldest ones to see Americans.
That is
Interesting.
I was I got involved
Yes, I feel trying to
sit back, have a little bit of water,
like
and
it's sort of it's so introduction or like
yeah, definitely sit back.
right working discourse.
actually what you
very
also
interesting.
said about the
What comes out of this of the bigger discourse.
One more minute.
I have my big bottle, but
There's water.
There was
For me, it was
There was a
found out
base-
with a big institution that's
what's that called?
private.
General income.
cookies.
And it's actually
World exchange.
Isn't that cute? And
very different. I should have. And I should have learned about all those structures. All the presentations that I was involved in. Implemented very strong power structure.
Wild how the pyramid is. The evening was like cool.
Yes, wasn't it?
Just need the sun to do its work.
On my mind. It's another discourse about what I really
Afternoon or
I just,
So then,
I'm here with Fashion Act now.
how did you go?
I helped with all the workshops, and now I'm just sort of.
German university.
we found it in a social
They basically hired them.
Are you based in Berlin or in London?
I'm based in Paris.
I'm kind of
London is so beautiful. I was in Oxford for 3 months.
some listeners in the
most of the time
Field work. I'm studying slow fashion acting.
a bit more air.
and
It just there's so much more going on over there than there is in France. It's really inspiring. I really had a wonderful time.
actually
Right. Hey everyone. Hi everyone.
That's okay.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be just waiting here and then you just come.
I'm not able to make the sound, but I think people got it.
Make the sound work. Oh, no, it
sort of
worked.
got it.
It worked. Hello everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Renata's not going to be here for us to hear me saying thank you.
Should I keep this open or do you want it closed?
Open, please, as long as it doesn't disturb anybody else. Thank you, thank you. I'm Dilys. I'm delighted and honoured to be chairing this presentation session this afternoon, this Learning Laboratory 2. I'm sorry we're in a bit of a long, thin table, but I suggest that once we've done the presentations that we move our chairs back and have a little bit more of a circular conversation. But we're all set up and I know that time is precious. It's going to be a keynote later on back down at the concert hall. So starting by working backwards, we need to be out of here by 5:15, just to say that. But before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge, first of all, everybody coming into the room and the time that it takes to do that, and that that time and the energy of that is really important. And I certainly feel very excited to be here in person. And just by being together, it's really important. But we've also got a massive imperative. Fashion education is probably in a more critical state than ever. I mean, Sandra created the context very vividly this morning in the first panel. I've been in other workshops as well. And actually, as fashion tutors, we sit in a tension between what is and what might be, and the pressures on students, the pressures on parents, pressures on ourselves. So I think that we also need to acknowledge that we're carrying a lot, and it's not easy stuff. This work around sustainability, it's really uncomfortable stuff, and it's difficult, and we can't just fix it with things that apparently seemed to be possible when I think the first narrative around sustainability in education probably 15, 20 years ago looked like it was all kind of something we could do within the system. We've got to change the education system. What's our agency as educators in being able to change that system? But I wanted to draw on a quote of David Graeber because I found it, that it brings kind of hope and energy to me. The ultimate hidden truth of the world, which I read as how we live in the world, is it something that we could just as easily make differently? So it's up to us. And we've got some amazing presentations this afternoon that show that it can be done. As the presenters know, we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes for each of the presentations. And I would ask that after each presentation, the questions are just clarification questions, so that after all the presentations, we've got a good amount of time to be able to discuss across the different presentations. Okay. I am wary that there's not that much time, but the conversation won't stop here either. So without further ado, please can I also introduce the wonderful
Franz.
Franz. Thank you, Franz. So Franz is very kindly helping to facilitate the presentations. And hello to everybody online as well. We hope you can feel some of our energy. It's great that you also have been able to take the time to join us. I know Anna, who was supposed to be in the room, is online, and her energy is being felt by us already. And that unfortunately, we can't take questions from people online, but we hope that the questions and provocations in the room will be useful. And the power of listening is really important to all of these ideas as well. So please know that the fact that you're listening is really important to this work too. So, first presentation, and I'm not going to introduce the presentation because I think everybody's going to be able to introduce themselves if they're okay with that, because otherwise that will take another 5 minutes. Learnings from Post-Fashion Making Lab.
Not so good.
So this is the Fashion Act Now team, and yeah, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves completely. I'm doing that, so please go ahead. Yeah.
But then you're not on camera.
You also have to sit here.
Should I go here? So am I spread out a bit, or should we all go here?
The guys that are down there, are they on camera?
Yeah, you should sit here. I'm just starting the presentation. 1 second. Yes, you should come here. I will just start the presentation.
Would you mind if I close the door?
Not if it was only for air, but do close it if it's noisy or distraction.
Yeah.
Would you like us to sit down?
Yes, sit down.
Okay, so I'm a bit space. I'll be the next slide.
There you go. Okay, you can just press through it here.
Oh. Hello. So this is learnings from a post-fashion making lab. And this is a paper that we've assembled together, the three of us, Sarah May, Karishma Kelsey, and myself, Sarah Arnold. And we are all educators as well as practitioners of fashion, and also members of Fashion Act Now, which otherwise called FAN. The three of us have kind of consolidated learnings from a number of de-fashion workshops that we've run as members of FAN, not just ourselves, but other members as well. And we wanted to create some kind of guidelines for anyone else who might want to join us in our lab, or just to kind of teach de-fashion making. That didn't change the slide. Did I press the wrong thing? Down.
Should work with just with the arrows. Just like this, right and left.
That's what I did. Okay, well, it's working now. So we've based these workshops on something that we developed within Fashion Act Now that we call our common code, which is, a set of values and principles that we apply to our idea of what defashioning is. So these consist of 4 categorizations: ethics, culture, regenerative systems, and governance. And within those sits 10 pillars. And I won't go through all of those 10 pillars today, but just give you a taster with some examples. That of expression. We collectively nurture creativity, cultures, and customs relating to dress, clothing, or bodily adornment. That of reciprocity. We support a culture of reciprocity and celebrate the interconnectedness of all things. That of sufficiency. We work towards systems that enable enough without overproducing. And that of commonwealth. We share our collective knowledge, skills, creativity, and or resources with others. So that's a bit of a taster. Workshops and what we call the common canvas is what I'm going to present next. As a group, we ran a number of workshops, and these had different audiences. Some were school children, some were university students, some academics, refugee communities, and also just members of Fashion Act Now. These workshops took place in the UK, in Canada, and New Zealand, and some feature intergenerational groups, and some can be adapted for young children as well as senior citizens. We created this canvas to help communities make, learn, and adapt together, led by purpose, meaning, and togetherness, and fostering a sense of belonging. It is a people-centered approach to expression through bodily adornment and an antidote to fashion. So we start thinking about the center of this circle, this wheel, and we think about what is the purpose, what is your purpose and your identity, and how, and collectively as well as personal, and how does that relate to people and planet? We then work out into the common code, thinking about what is important within your community. And then we choose a way of learning for the workshop. And we identified kind of 4 key ways of learning, which we'll talk about more later. So some examples of the workshops we ran, some on collective identities, creating material emblems, for example, that manifest your identity as a group and cultivate a shared purpose. We had some on more than human teachers, the idea that we can identify with a non-human element and learn from it. We had some on what if this particular part of the code governed your world. We can draw a card from the common code and develop an illustration or an alternative world, and perhaps prototype an artifact from this other world. We also had a workshop on sharing stories, and this happened over meals. We could share cultural stories in food, designing wearable textiles that represent a story, and creating a relationship with a chosen place. We celebrate togetherness. We also had visioning a post-fashion world, putting yourself within a vision and thinking about what you see in that vision and mapping that out. So here are then some of the potential outcomes of workshops. We had manifestos, performances, people growing things, commoning, eating together, shared experiences, creating banners and messages and artifacts from imagined worlds.
And then, as part of the learning, we identified 4 approaches to post-fashion making. And the first one is learning through togetherness. In fashion, there's actually clear distinction between the designer, the supply chain, the customer. But in a post-fashion making workshop, we encourage the blurring of roles of the maker, the user, bringing them together in one community and in an open dialogue of non-hierarchical mutual relationship. Post-fashion making is collaborative. It's centered around relationship. We see huge benefits in coming together as communities to listen to each other, to learn from each other's experiences, and to understand each other's perspectives, needs, wants, customs, and deep heritage. Being heard and building a foundation of trust, we find, is important. But it is actually not just important, it is crucial. It requires giving space, time, and patience. The second one is learning through visioning, mapping, deconstruction, and reconstruction. We've realized that to transcend beyond the current fashion paradigm, we need a better understanding of fashion system and of all of its potential alternatives. We noticed that post-fashion workshops can have exercises to help us examine and to deeply envision alternatives. We encourage taking inspiration from disassembling, from unlearning, from relearning and reassembling, or focusing on something that you would like to unlearn and then relearn. The third we found was learning from nature. Post-fashion making workshops recognize the benefits of looking beyond human teachers. The fashion paradigm has left us separated from nature and place, which asks you to reconnect. There's much to learn from our natural world. This approach is particularly successful when working with children who naturally think out of the box about what they can learn from the world around them. The last being learning from heritage and personal experience. Fashion as a practice of modernity and postmodernity. Fashion is an expression of a break from tradition and heritage and a blindness to the wisdom and skills handed down intergenerationally. Post-fashion, however, urges us to look inwards as well as into our histories and our legacies. The workshops pursue building on new ideas about cultural identity or deep identity and collective identity of a community. Fashion as a globalized monoculture has left many people, especially in the West, without a cultural identity or actually just lacking an understanding of it. But in the post-fashion workshop, our aim is to put back meaning into our clothes. If we want to do that, we must ask questions about who we are and where do we come from. What then are new traditions, new customs we should develop? And how then can we create new systems of dress with real meaning?
So some of our key learnings from post-fashion making workshops, we've got 3 key learnings. The first one is that changing mindsets is a gradual process, takes a lot of time. So the ideas of defashion and post-fashion need a lot of time to sink in. And for many people, especially those attached to a fashioned way of making, it's going to take a long time for those ideas to sink in and to be able to think beyond fashion. So participants have much to unlearn, and that requires a non-linear approach to managing time. And this idea of the reliance on the clock and the 7-day week are legacies of colonialism, so we need to kind of think past that. So changing mindsets is a slow, gradual process, and that should be nurtured with the participants by giving them open time to think, reflect, and discuss as a group. And some of our workshops were only 2 hours long, and actually we really found this length was just not enough. And that really only covered the introduction and the context of that workshop. So ideally, workshops need to happen over a long amount of time. They could be over several weeks, over several months or years. Another learning was community and trust. So the outcomes of every workshop differed very greatly depending on who the audience was. Workshops with existing communities or with people who intend on becoming a community seem to work better. And to create together and to trust each other requires time, requires shared experiences, and shared purpose. So exercises to foster relationships are vital, whether that's an icebreaker, an outing, eating together. Essentially, a commons can't exist without commoning. Our third key learning was process, not product. So the process of the workshops really can produce that new knowledge. The focus is not necessarily on an outcome. So learning through making offers an opportunity for the participants to take ownership of their own learning, and some of our workshops allow the direction to be decided by those participants and really cultivated rich conversations and togetherness. Defashion is a process. So that's about it. The canvas, this will be on the Fashion Act Now website for everybody to use, and we really welcome additional learnings so that we can update and extend the wheel, extend the canvas, and let us know what post-fashion jobs you do.
I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to have to hold them. And thoughts. Any questions for clarification? Or short questions? We've got 2 or 3 minutes for short questions, specifically about, yes, Nina.
Is this happening? How is this interacting with fashion institutions? What is the relationship between the institution or the university and Fashion Act Now?
I mean, a lot of us are somehow related to some of us are in institutions, some of us are not, and some of us have affiliation with institutions, but we act independently. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that does. In the case of the younger students, it's done in school contexts. So definitely part of mainstream education curriculum.
And are you testing this within the setting of, an undergraduate or postgraduate course? How?
We did have tested a pilot at LCF and done something in the institution, but a lot of it's happening outside at the minute. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, then I'm going to ask a follow-on question, actually, which is, where do you think it's most powerful to be doing this work? Where have you found it to be?
I wonder if you want to, I think you have a particular workshop that at least we felt was quite powerful by the sounds of it.
The refugee one. Yeah. I that was a longer project that I worked a year and a half or so ago with a refugee community, and it was most powerful, I guess, some of the key learnings here, because they were an existing community that already had a connection to each other. They had friendships built into their relationship already, and it felt like the dialogue that we had over a series of 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, really gave the time and the space and the direction to lead them into making, but also we created a collaborative cloth that actually became meaningful for them, because it's something that they can now take out to parades and use as backdrops for other events. So the life of the making that happened is multifunctional. It can work in lots of different spaces. So I think we felt like that was something that was quite important.
Krishna, did you want to talk about the school children?
Yeah, and then we ran, and we're still running it actually, a workshop that runs for about 3 hours a week over the course of a year. And it's with teenagers. And the idea of looking at defashioning, but looking at it from the perspective of self, and then connecting it to culture. So it's quite a long process. And then from connecting it to culture, looking at how we can develop new societies, new worlds. So they develop a project, they co-create a project for themselves. And so the successes have been going through this journey that students were really able to connect to themselves and then connect to other people and dig really deeply into their concepts of culture and their concepts of fashioning in their cultures, and then bring that to the table to co-create something else. And that led to co-creating identities even of self. Breaking up with fashion even before it started. And I think the reason we found this was pivotal in this age group was because being a teenager, you're incredibly susceptible to the whole concept of body image and wanting to be on trend, wanting to be part of a community and accepted in a peer group. And here were a bunch of students who were sort of radical activists and wore that as a badge of honor. So they were almost running this workshop over this long period of time was a sense of helping them form what would become. And so that for me has been really powerful, and parents and community feedback is actually what's been the most exciting part of this.
Yeah. Thank you.
What gender is your participant primarily? Male, female, like sort of percentages?
Well, in high school, it's everything.
Do they
It's
get
all
to
the
choose to come and join you?
yes. It's run as what is called a WAMAGA. It's part of a bigger decolonial education curriculum framework. It's all gender, but it is in the senior part of, so it's college.
Sort of equal, male, female?
Yes.
I feel like that's been reasonably equal.
It's male, female, gender fluid, like it just crossed a boundary of people, in my case. But
Yeah, I don't.
I've done mostly fashion schools. You know what happens there. We do have a it's skewed towards female, but some male.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Questions and thoughts, and connect them to the next presentation, which is D-Fashion London, a sensory fashion media walk.
Sorry, Sarah, you're back. I was going to say, Sarah, grab a glass of water.
it's you.
Of course, I will just put it here and 1 second.
Sarah's busy. It's the third thing she's done in 4 seats. Okay, so we'll just get started. So yeah, I'm Sophie Barr.
I'm Sarah May.
And we both, if you're not already aware, we both work at London College of Fashion in the School of Media and Communication, which I think is important to note. And in June, we did, I don't know what the verb is for this, and we're not about new language. We did a walk, we produced a walk, we hosted a walk, we shared a walk, not quite sure, but we did an 11-mile walk, a D-Fashion walk from Shepherd's Bush, which is where our School of Media and Communication was sited, to our new amazing building, which is opening as we speak in East London in the old in the Olympic Park. And this was a kind of pilot walk that was for both staff and students. So we are going to play a video. We're not going to talk about the walk in great detail, and we kind of changed the name of this. It's, again, it's about our learning, but we kind of renamed this Why You Should, and I know there's students here and lecturers here and all sorts of people here, but why we should walk together with our students for 8 hours. 8 hours being the important thing. So the video gives an impression of the walk, and so we're not going to detail too much about that.
Yeah, and so we'd just like to acknowledge our positionality before we begin as well. We are both white, able-bodied, sexual, side-gendered women. We're located in London, and we acknowledge the privilege that this brings, and therefore the lens through which our walk has been conducted.
Yes, okay. So first, we've got 4 reasons that you should walk for 8 hours with your students. The first is walking for resistance. I think it's really important to note that we're not antagonistic towards the institution. It's not like some kind of evil monolith. It's also not perfect, but we are very clear that a de-fashioned education has to resist the sort of transactional consumer model that comes with high fees that we have in the United Kingdom, and that it's not the only model for learning and teaching. But with our epic walk that we did, we sort of brought the institution with us, but we're also outside it. So there's this kind of inside, outside kind of balance, which I think is quite important in what we did. 8 hours is important. It kind of mirrors the traditional working day in the global north, yet we're not producing anything. So this duration resists the sort of temporal norms of the traditional timetabled classroom space. And Berg and Sieber note in their paper, The Slow Professor, quote, the administrative university is concerned above all with efficiency, a corporate value which results in a time crunch, making those of us subjected to it feel powerless, end quote. So during the 8-hour walk, we resist email, admin, meetings, professional development, and the competitive aspects of research. Students can't work towards a defined goal or an outcome or a next step. We're kind of talking about whether, was it research? It's not really research. It's kind of a classroom as a walk. They're not going to be assessed or measured on the walk. They won't receive feedback on it in the traditional sense. So we really feel that this resists transactional learning. We also recognise that a walk of this duration is an awful lot to ask of our students. So we have to demand it as part of the curriculum. It can't be open to just the students who can afford to take part because they're not spending all the hours they're not at college working or, as they describe it, doing their side hustle. So it can't be a special day outside of normal learning and teaching. So an epic walk has to be embedded and integral as part of holistic teaching and learning practice. We are attempting to have more time together doing less. So in essence, in this first point, walking for 8 hours with your students encourages soft forms of growth and resists capitalist ones.
So our second point is walking for resilience. So we really found that walking together as a group for an extended amount of time nurtures relationships with each other, with the different species we encountered, and we really became active participants, and this felt really hopeful. It felt like we were walking for change. And taking part in this really builds connection. We shared a common purpose, and the process of walking becomes an act of resilience, which is a fundamental attribute for our students who currently face multiple global challenges, increasing pressures on mental health, amongst many other things. Adaptability, we had to adapt many times on our walk. We had to change the route, we had to reduce the activities that we planned, we had to cope with changes in my childcare setup. We had many obstacles to overcome, so walking really produces adaptive capacities. Overcoming obstacles, recovering from those difficulties, and building emotional strength are required to nurture this resilience. All of these will be encountered on a long-form walk in some shape or form. And so balancing the individual and community needs fosters these adaptive capacities, and obviously these are essential for our future fashion students, fashion thinkers, fashion makers, fashion communicators, fashion change makers. Don't give up. Our bodies were really tired, it was a very long walk, it was really hot, but we carried on. And de-fashion is a process, and it's this it's a transition towards a post-fashion world. And this long-form walk, it teaches students to embrace the messy fashion ecologies, and it encourages this resilience and seeing things through when the going gets tough. Our walk was also a feminist walk. We talked, we shared, we cared, we read aloud, we listened, we expressed anger, we claimed space, we felt free in a city. And so taking part as a student in a walk that bridges the political, the environmental, the social aspects to a city, or a location really begins to create the conditions required for kind of new fashion learning to evolve. And having this freedom to explore and really think about the kind of potential of our students, and hopefully can begin to create these alternative systems that we need. This is resilience.
Our third point, you've probably seen them listed at the end there, it's on a loop, is walking to see systems. So walking for 8 hours with others in a big quote unquote fashion city promotes systems thinking. Our walk enabled us to connect dots, notice flows, witness a multitude of intersecting systems at work, which we could never encounter in the classroom, maybe in theory, but not in this kind of full-on not in this full-on way. So we saw seductive luxury shop windows, street markets, big screens and billboard adverts, pigeons, crows, insects and fish, road, water, air and pedestrian transportation and goods movement systems, the infrastructure for electronic and postal networks, We saw a lot of litter. We saw potentially tens of thousands of people all doing stuff, wearing stuff. We saw these women protesting and occupying the streets. So moving for 8 hours across a big global fashion city, we saw so much wealth and poverty. I mean, we saw such concentrations of wealth. We really felt it was not reducible to, I've written here, it sounds really pompous, abstracted, disinterested Cartesian visuality, no less. With a kind of white heteronormative male figure, the flaneur as we know him. He's not there. He's not present in this actual real walk. It's not reducible. Pardon?
He wasn't there. No, he wasn't there. He did come along. He's welcome to come along. He's absolutely welcome. It's not reducible to a system of signs to decode either. So I think it's really clear, and you're going to talk a bit more about this, but we're in it with our bodies. It's messy. It's hot, and it's not quite chaos. So we're finding these patterns and learning how one system is really necessary for another. And as a kind of media and comms specialist, not a fashion maker, not kind of dealing with textiles really, is really important for me and hopefully the future for communication students. We really look at the kind of materiality of our media systems. I really love James Bridle's writing. He describes our computational systems as opaque. And he explains, quote, when power is abstracted to the degree that it becomes both unassailable and almost invisible, we are unable to think clearly and we feel utterly powerless in response. This is not necessarily because we lack power, but because we lack any systemic understanding or narrative cohesion with which to construct a response, end quote. So walking for 8 hours with students has the potential to develop systemic understanding and to maybe do a bit of rewriting some of these dominant fashion narratives about our fashion cities, our opaque media networks, maybe we can see those a bit. Fashion and media and communication have not really been part of the discourse of de-fashion in the same way that more obviously material aspects of industrialized fashion systems have been. That is what I'm really keen to work on. So walking for 8 hours with students is an excellent way to see, notice, begin to understand how these networks are material and key to the functioning of fashion systems as we know them. So, this is walking to see systems.
So our last point was walking to feel systems. So walk was sensorially overwhelming. As I said before, it was a really hot day. We were really hot, we were joyful, we were weary, we were heavy, we were restful, we were vibrant, alive, we were achy, we were tired. And I think something I said at the end was I really felt the city on my skin. So this idea of a sensory walking activity, a sensory walk, encourages an interaction between body and ground, speed, texture, rhythm, posture, and really helping participants to become aware of our entanglement with place and with each other. And so walking to feel these systems is perhaps a kind of important or significant mode by which our senses can be mapped and prioritised for learning to de-fashion. And we need to consider this entanglement with place, space, body, and the non-human to really kind of prod at these, prod at the categorization, if you like, and start to unravel those edges. And maybe that's where those kind of new conditions for unlearning, new mindsets can be found. So employing these multi-sensorial activities that we didn't kind of do, but microsite analysis, sound recordings, species identification, all of this really supports a non-linear approach to learning, to story sharing techniques. We really found that taking these small breaks to observe, to listen, to read, to look and to smell were really useful towards learning how to feel these diverse systems all around us. We employed Kevin Potts's theory around pedestrian pedagogy, which encourages a slow ecological awareness of our shared public realm and considers the pavement as a shared classroom. So this kind of 8 hours of learning outdoors really increased our consciousness of the local systems as well that we travelled through, and we moved through many different local global zones micro, macro, and all of those supported this connection to a place and giving the students energy and agency around that place. So learning about these local ecosystems, histories, cultures is a step towards having an awareness and perhaps building these kind of more regional fashion systems. So yes, a walk like this is a great first step in bringing fashion to students. It takes a lot of slow time, and we don't know how much time really it will take moving forward. So it's a real slow approach to teaching and learning to counter this consumer model of education. So you can't use capitalist models of learning to do fashion. And a quote here from Thomas Skovholt and Michelle Trotter from The Resilient Practitioner. They say, if we are busy doing, then there is no chance to be, yet it is being that produces the chance to learn.
We have just got a few reasons you shouldn't walk with your students as well.
We haven't even told you that no students actually showed up. Exactly. Well, this was because it wasn't part of the curriculum, it was an option.
Oh my God.
You must demand So the reasons you shouldn't. So first of all, it's really hard to
fit into the institutional working model because we're all so busy, of course.
It's not impossible, and it might depend on your institution. They
might be faced with this, it might be difficult, you might be really struggling to make something like this happen. But we also think this is a reason that you should.
It's really difficult to decenter the human in a city so teeming with humans. Sophie said, like, how many people have we walked past today? You know, and it was so overwhelming. So perhaps another reason is this question of, can we decenter walking through a massive city?
We are very mindful that walking might appear to be an exclusive practice for mobile people.
So organise an epic walk with caution.
But we also think it's an opportunity to walk on what Ellen Sampson describes as crip time, and she notes in her non-fiction essay, quote, rather than bend disabled bodies and minds to meet the clock, crip time bends the clock to meet disabled bodies and minds, unquote. So another reason you should do a walk with your students. Just do it on crip time instead.
So another reason why you shouldn't is that walking for 8 hours in a different city might be absolutely totally inappropriate, fully dangerous, and you know, not feasible, just not possible. It's too risky. So depending on where you are in the world, ethnicity, gender, it's just not something that can be done.
Thank you.
So again, a lot to say. Questions for clarity or short questions from anyone?
Would you do it again?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it was a pilgrimage of sorts because we were going from our old site to new through the centre of this kind of fashion city. It was a pilot. We learned so much. It was too much within that time. We could do it microscopically. We could walk around a 10-metre site for an incredibly long time. You know, we could, you know, there's so many different options, and I think that's what this pilot has really, thrown up for us.
Right. Quick one, just, you go. I was just wondering, if you did it with staff, and did you get a lot of sort of, I guess, critical discussion, and did a lot of the insights come through discussing this with the people on the walk? Because it seems quite deep and a lot of learnings that have come from it. But did they come from the conversations with the staff that you walked with? And do you think these would be very different if you'd done it with students, or do you think that would be interesting to compare? Like, because would you get the same, do you think you'd get the same insight?
Get the same, because they'd be different people.
Yeah.
But a lot of this has come from the conversations and the act of being there, the experience of being on that walk. But I think that if students were there, it would.
I have done walks.
even
Yeah, I have done walks with
richer.
students. I have done not to this scale, but I have done
Quite a few.
have done walking pedagogy before, and it completely changes the relationship because it's something about the side by side and the moving rather than this kind of formal face to face or transactional transmission type relationship. It's completely different, and you find out things about your students that you wouldn't know, you know, maybe quite personal things. But just you find out about their hopes and their fears and their worries, and then actually you can kind of because we kind of studied it with these readings that actually I think were really successful, where our participants would all kind of just take an excerpt and read it in pre-planned spots.
We had a booklet.
Yeah, and actually they were like, you know, and so kind of making these connections between the theory and the reading and the spaces and kind of, you know, we were outside the Russian embassy posting postcards that we'd written to people, you know, on a particular space where we're kind of also looking at these sort of media networks and, you know, all of these things are sort of kind of slotting in together.
I think what we probably haven't said now, there's quite
so
a lot of
much
the
to
production and
it.
the organisation that we decided not to talk about now because we wanted to just talk about these learnings in a way. But I think some of those learnings have come from the fact that we had an organised booklet with readings, with discussions, with activities at certain different places. So there was a reason for some of these learnings to come up because we'd already kind of foregrounded it with different texts. So,
yeah. We just thought it would take probably 45 minutes to describe what we did.
And on that note, I might just say,
Yeah, exactly.
You hold your question.
No worries.
Are you sorry?
No, it was basically along the same lines as Zoe's. So.
Thank you, guys. Status quo.
Yes.
Interventions, classes in fashion, in fashion and styles.
I'll give you the booklet as well.
Claire and Bianca.
Yeah.
Ja, die Def, genau.
Ja.
Hello, this is us. Our English is really not so good, so I hope we just get. No, honestly, we need to tell you a lot, and we hope that this is enough to tell it. But okay, so we will present the learning outcomes of our design project Status Quo, Design Interventions Questioning Classism in Fashion and Style. And well, it's easy to guess. Status quo is German. It's a word game with status quo, the current status, and wo means where in German. So we were asking, where is status in fashion? Basically, with this course, right?
Right. So just a short introduction. This is my dear colleague and friend Bianca Kozan. My name is Claire Kasper. Some things we have in common. For example, we are both white, both female red. We are both with a Western normative appearance in the world, although we both have an Eastern European post-migrant background. We are also both non-inheritance expecting, shaped by precarity and very much disillusioned about neoliberal promises. And we both conceptualize discourse.
Yeah, and I mean, you find a lot of stuff in the bio blog about us, but I actually own the design agency and a studio for experimental fashion design. I'm a research associate. I'm a lecturer at several universities, and I'm doing my PhD at the Academy of Fine Arts on design process, social medias, social class in Berlin's fashion scene. And I grew up in the GDR, and you are from the other side of the...
I'm from the other side. Yeah. I am a fashion designer and owner of the Blaukraut fashion label, which I founded in 2015. And I also work as a lecturer at the HTW Berlin, as I focus on discrimination due to social position or origin in the field of freelance fashion designers in Germany. I lecture about classism in the creative industries. Also, I work as a community manager and a moderator at Platte Berlin, an association which I was a founding board member and which is a physical space and an association at the Alexanderplatz to make fashion design of Berlin more visible.
Yeah, but it's not only us who did the course. Actually, there were students who took part and they co-developed the course with us. So we'd like to name Mi Bui, Mala, Najme, Naji, Marlene Raymakers, Emma Steinel, Liv Sillinger, Nadine Aurin, Yashima Sophie Garvey, as well as Teresa Fischer, who's from the Bauhaus University and supported us with photography, and Professor Horst Fetzer, who actually assigned us for the course, which is actually not so unimportant. So what was the course about?
Despite claims of equality in the abolition of class privileges,
Yeah. We know that's what we sent to be accepted for the conference. And actually, of course, there's deep reflections coming along with this, and we were trying to pump all our intellectual energy in it. But we thought we might take the chance to talk what it was really about. And actually, the thing is, I met Claire at HTW Berlin, and just always in the floors, and we never could find time to talk. I heard that she's teaching classism somehow in an elective course, and she knew that I was the critical privilege teaching design lecturer, and we just couldn't find time. We were so busy, but not busy. We were really working because we needed the money. And then we've had the idea, we do a course together. And then we went to Horst Fetzer and we told him, we want to do a course together because this meant paid time together to reflect. So that's really a good idea. And what was very important to us as well is, since you know through our biography we are design practitioners, so we really wanted not to have a discourse about classism anymore, only in theory. We want to go for design practice. So we really asked it, give us a real big design project. We want to do this with classism.
And we wanted to dive into the topic together with the students, and therefore opened each workshop with a Befindlichkeitsrunde. Literally translated, that means well-being round, but it is actually a proper tool of the sociocratic model of how to structure general assemblies at eye level, and taking also into account the emotional state of the individual. Because we wanted to create, and we did create, a space that was open to coming outs, but did not demand it, because we are explicitly not interested in exhibiting or exploiting experienced marginalization, so there was no pressure of exposing oneself. And it meant that your background could, but did not have to be part of your work.
Yeah. Coming to the background, so where did the course happen? This is not so unimportant, actually. Of course, Berlin, Germany, you see the tower. But this university, the HTW, the University of Applied Sciences, with its Faculty of Culture and Design, well, it is the go-to states university of every non-privileged, untrained, uneducated fashion dreamer before he might become a student. Actually, people that apply at the HTW Berlin are the ones that did not compile the portfolio that got them accepted to the good art schools in Berlin. It's the ones that have had no money to pay private schools, and they're very much classified as untalented. It comes with 40 students per semester. Sometimes the students are they're marginalized in a lot of intersectional moments. And what is very, very weird is that this university itself is claiming that they're aiming to produce kind of like the working class for the fashion industry. It's still in their identity workout that this is why this is a university for applied sciences. And they're kind of like announcing that they have great technical equipment, but basically they're unaware of their biggest, pro, and it's about this diversity that they have going on. And so, of course, this was very interesting to teach classism within this context. Coming along with the lectureship we both had, so we're not professors, and it meant that in Germany, there's this lectureship format where German academic invented to keep up classes structure in academia, because you only get a contract for 6 months, it's never prolonged, you're always frightened, and it's very, very badly paid, and still you're the fresh blood injecting, professors sitting there, being there for a while, and maybe don't have an idea for now, or going into research semester. Just, I wanted to.
We can continue this after.
Yeah, okay. But now, coming up to the exercises.
Yes. So this was a course titled with sustainability. And sustainable clothing and classism, normally, if it is reflected in society, it is reflected in questions like who made your clothes, where is the production situated, or how long are the delivery routes. Or if it comes to participation reflections, the question is, who can afford to buy sustainable fashion? But we wanted to question also, who can afford to make or design fashion, who can afford to study fashion, and who can afford to teach fashion? So we structured the course in several exercises, which were theoretically, practical, but also interactive. And important to us was a designed result out of each exercise, as we weighted the process of the whole semester quite strong in comparison to the final fashion work. And that was also reflected in the grading, which is quite a challenge. We started the first exercise with a group reflection on biases and the several kinds of capital which each individual has in its background and which put you into a position within a class or in a social milieu. And what we learned there was that the class mobility you gain or not gain by having access to money, networks, or education is crucial to building a successful existence within the fashion industry.
Yes. So this exercise was followed along by mapped interviewing. The students were asked to probe and therefore kind of designally conduct expert interviews with actors in the Berlin fashion scene, asking them about capital in general. And of course, it was very interesting because they were afraid that nobody wanted to talk with them because it's such a hidden topic and nobody actually want to say something or expose. And after the interview, the students made those kind of very intuitive mappings. And as you can see, they're very, very individual. The outcome for them and for us was social capital is crucial and critical for success. Having and earning no money is the reality for a majority of Berlin's fashion scene. That sounds normal, but actually it's quite new for the students to hear it in this broad sense. And that people find, invent, and practice, but do not communicate hybrid existences to afford to work in fashion.
In exercise 3, we reflected how styles of working and poor class got and gets appropriated on various levels and are consumed by unpolitical fashion victims, and how high-end fashion brands adapt the shabby chic of subcultural and working class movements, which therefore lose their fashion codes. On the first step, we classified the declarations, poor or poverty chic, poverty style, and poverty porn, and in the second step, we researched for examples in the fashion history and apparel. And for the students, this exercise was quite eye-opening as they had been mostly unconscious about it.
So, we heard a lot about systems, and that's why we actually decided, especially going on with this topic of classism, to collaborate with the master program System Design at the HTW Berlin, respectively with Professor Pelincelik and her research associate Olivia Hidalgo Miranda. And they developed a workshop format called haptic recordings or haptical recordings. And this workshop actually is made to, it starts with an event and then via a three-dimensional mind mapping, students get into kind of like solution finding, first understanding the systems and then coming up with solutions collaboratively. Well, it was very, very helpful that we did this approach, but of course it raised a lot of questions too, because somehow to fight or kind of like do something against classism in fashion, it seemed to be not so much the solution to do clothes, but to work in system design, but we were not a system design master program. So we just thought of it as a very interesting and necessary collaboration. And we, of course, we can talk about it later, but we really need to open up interdisciplinary to get things going. Right.
Yeah, there we were already more or less half of the semester and that was gone. And some of the students really had strong feelings about these limitations which can be caused by class. And they went on to find textile translations for social constraints, and that moved them to quite interesting and experimental designs. You can see some of them here. For example, one student expresses the immobility and impossibility to develop one's own potential by concrete and denim. That's the picture here. on the left, so the fabric cannot move anymore, and the dress made out of it disables you to work. Or, for example, another student visualized the lack of social capital by holes in the design, that is the white dress, and by reddish cheeks in the styling, which stands for being constantly ashamed of having to ask for help all the time. And also she only used gifted materials for styles. And all of the students, we could feel, developed a desire to change or to transform these constraints, which we have been talking about. And that tempted, for example, a third student to invent transformable styles, which is the blue jacket above. But it was quite interesting to see, or we could observe that some of the students started a more or less conventional, structured conceptual design process, while others, and apparently those who tried to integrate in intersectional marginalization, left all frames of drawing, prototyping, and literally gave birth to their visions in whatever intuitive way. You can also see posters of the photos that the students themselves took of their work, and below every poster there's a keynote of each student, and I welcome you very much to later on read the keynotes of the students, because now we are describing what we see in their work or how we categorize it, but with their own words it's actually more real.
Yes. So, of course, it seemed obvious or nearby that regarding documentation, it might be interesting to translate the idea of changing or varying perspectives in order to learn and unlearn into the documentation. So we introduced the students to two different setups of documentation. First, studio photography, and then, way more interesting in the results you see here, box camera photography. Therefore, we invited a scholar from Bauhaus, and she lent to the students the box cameras, and the students for the first time kind of like really did analog photography and heard the whole story about the idea that those box cameras have been the cameras that have been used by working class for the majority of the 20th century. So we have had very, very different perspectives on this box camera, and of course it was super exciting to shoot a photo without seeing the picture, and then being firstly not so happy, and then after all very happy. So that was very, very, it was an emotional roller coaster with this photography part, and a lot of disappointment in the beginning, a lot of fear that it's not enough how it's pictured, and then at the exhibition, understanding what multi-perspective means and experiencing it with the people that came to the exhibition was quite emotional.
And we've already got a little bit more time.
Yeah.
At the end.
You're coming up. Yeah.
Okay, speed up. So to present the results of the course, we opened a public design intervention, we may also call it exhibition, at the Platte, Berlin. And it contained installations of the work, including the styles, the photos, and the sketchbooks with the mappings and posters of all the exercises, but also performances were done by 2 projects. And we could actually feel quite a strong aim to work on performative level to the subject of classism. So for the future, it is also a challenge to integrate this aim into the educational structure in the semester timetable. And in this physical space of the installation, we also conducted the final exam with each single student in terms of reflecting together their design process, which we as lecturers then had to grade.
Yes, there's just a little thing that we wanted to share regarding the feedback sessions. We came up with the idea to do texted reflecting. So we asked the students what were their learning outcomes, and they just send us a message. And this actually, after filling in evaluation forms, having informal conversations, felt quite normal and very interesting to the students as well as to us. What did we learn? We're rushing through the learning. So let's go for it. So emotion is part of all this stuff when you come along with critical perspectives: anger, concern, desire, vulnerability. But I have to say, we weren't prepared to the extent of the emotion that happened, even to both of us in this course. And then?
Yeah, it was quite a roller coaster. We actually need more interdisciplinary cooperations to include not only these performative dimensions in the critical design approaches, but to go on in this.
Yeah, and we discovered that actually tackling a specific marginalization as design practice opens up and enables adjacency for other marginalizations. So that was a very interesting learning too, to not teach kind of like marginalization in general, but kind of like picking a special one, maybe several special ones, and then everybody else can kind of like, yeah, it just opened up this adjacency moment.
So we really want to establish reflections on classistic structures within the creative industries as a necessary part of fashion education. And we really claim that we should stop conveying neoliberal mantras like hard work will always be rewarded, or your success is a question of your will, or we all have the same possibilities and all that blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
Talent makes success.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and actually the thing that you can really recommend is if you want to spend time with somebody you want to get to know and want to exchange, then go for co-teaching and ask universities for this co-teaching options. And thank you. We're looking forward for questions, comments, and well, if you want to talk about classism, we're here.
Have this a whole day. Any quick questions for clarification?
Just a comment. I don't know why you made any comment about your English, because it was fantastic and amazing. Literally
I'm
great.
sorry that we can't do it. We're in Germany, we should be able to, but yeah. It was, yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Great. So now we have, I should be ready for the next one, shouldn't I? Beyond sustainability. Okay. Nina and Anna are presenting this, and Anna is in London, so
Anna can't present.
So she can't present, but she is online. She can see us, and yeah, it's
Got like a chat message going on with her. If I stop and read the messages, that's because she's telling me I've missed something. But yeah, unfortunately, Anna last minute couldn't get on a train to Berlin, so sadly she's not here. So she sends her apologies, but this is very much a co-designed and developed presentation. I'm just going to get some water.
You do the same thing.
You don't have to turn around so much. Press this button.
Okay, cool. Anna says hi. Okay, so find my notes. So hi everybody, my name's Nina Stevenson and I am based at the Centre for Sustainable Fashion, research centre located at London College of Fashion, University of the Arts London, and Anna Fitzpatrick, who's my co-presenter in spirit, is a lecturer and colleague from the Centre for Sustainable Fashion and is also working on her PhD. And we are here today to talk about the idea of beyond sustainability as education as usual, which is kind of a collection of words that is very much a work in progress, hence they're kind of collected together. We've got what we want to talk to you about today is really about kind of education systems and how the idea of defashioning education connects with this idea of the system of fashion. Anna and I have been working on trying to figure out fashion education for more than a decade, located specifically at University of the Arts London. And we've had the privilege of being able to do that from a dynamic and kind of radical thinking space at the Centre for Sustainable Fashion, but also kind of connecting and collaborating with different parts of that education system across fashion design, fashion business and fashion communication. I've also been able over the past couple of years to be thinking about the role of the interconnections between sustainability and education more broadly across University of the Arts London, so fashion in other parts of this very, very large institution, but also other disciplines as well, and had the opportunity to connect and learn from colleagues in different parts of that institution. We know, thank you to Sandra this morning for her amazing opening provocation and to many of the conversations that we've all been participating in today, but we know that it's debatable that fashion systems need to be redesigned, and so do education systems. Therefore, we've talked about the neoliberal marketisation of higher education, of which I am a participant in, and how this is essentially at odds with the idea of an earth and equity first paradigm for fashion education. So we know that the higher education sector, as we currently know it, represents a diverse range of educational establishments across cultures and continents, yet what they have in common is that universities in all shapes and sizes and forms are determined essentially by the market forces of neoliberalism. And fashion has an even more complex relationship. Looking at the example of London College of Fashion, has a long-standing relationship with the idea of vocational training, skills training for an industrial setting. So there are tensions that come with that. Our institutions for fashion education are responsible for the development of skills, for technical use, but also the development of critical thinking and practice. And our graduates often arrive at the institution with an aspiration to work in a fashion industry that's largely not fit for purpose on a burning planet. So, despite climate emergency declarations, we know that operational change is happening, but is it systemic and is it the right change? Where are we focusing our efforts? Where are we placing our thinking and our learning? It kind of brings me to the idea, looking at kind of some of the reading that Anna's done. I'm not going to try and explain it because she would do a much better job of it, but some of the ideas that we've been thinking about are, the idea that you can't force transformation to happen, you can't write it into the curriculum, you can create the space for it to happen. So this requires more than market-driven and outcomes-oriented visions of education. How do we create those spaces for that transformative learning to take place rather than trying to crowbar it into the curriculum? So today we wanted to kind of touch on a nascent project that's a number of different strands of work coming together, and to ask you for ideas and conversations that will help inform that is about us challenging that idea of how we go beyond sustainability as usual and how can we bring about institutional change and transformation. So we know that education for sustainability, so the idea of creating space for that transformational teaching and learning is being co-opted by education as usual, so the business as usual model. And we're kind of participating in that and struggling with that at the same time. So we're seeing concerted efforts to introduce good, high-quality education for sustainability within fashion education and more broadly across the higher education sector. We were recently participating in a project with the QAA, which is the kind of sector standards organisation in the UK that kind of sets the standards for the teaching and learning at university level. And we were collaborating with a couple of other institutions in the UK to present like a sector-wide benchmark for what good sustainability teaching and learning looks like. And the quality principles that emerged from that project, we were a contributing partner, not the lead partner, were that sustainability learning needs to be holistic and joined up. So looking at kind of the different agendas of sustainability, not just environmental, but also economic, cultural sustainability, social sustainability. That it needs to be integrated into compulsory modules and teaching, that it needs to be across all levels of study, not just in your first year or in your final major project, and that it needs to be integrated as part of assessment design. So that's the kind of place where the higher education sector is in need of some quality benchmarks because they're not there. However, are they the right quality benchmarks? That's a question we're grappling with. And alongside that, we're part of the work at University of the Arts London for taking, a very kind of exciting and bold and collaborative approach to creating frameworks for embedding climate, social and racial justice into our courses at UAL. We've got, working groups, we've got frameworks, we've got participants engaging in the work, and we've developed a framework which builds on some of the theories from Centre for Sustainable Fashion, and particularly a project called Fashion Seeds, where we have been able to identify different levels of change and what that looks like in the course handbook. So the validated documentation that sits alongside the teaching of a course, the thing that is quite difficult to lose from the institution, it's separate to the embodied practice that we have in the people that make up an education system, but it's the thing that kind of, you know, creates the administration, I suppose. So we've identified what that looks like in a course handbook. We're auditing it. We know what it looks like if a course is on their way, but there's further for them to go. And we've created the journey that we want to support those courses to go through. And whilst these efforts are time-consuming, collaborative, ambitious, participatory, they're also working towards the adaptation of an existing education system, which is needed, but is it placing efforts in the right place? So Anna wanted to talk a bit about utopian pedagogies. I'm hoping she's going to send me some notes on that, because I'm not going to try and speak to the things that she wanted to talk about, but one of the quotes that she has added to our notes is the idea that an ethos of experimentation that is oriented towards carving out spaces for resistance and reconstruction here and now are the idea of a utopian pedagogy, and that's quoting Cote, Day and Deputer. And I think, you know, I know that we can draw connections there with Sophie and Sarah's work and their epic walk. So yeah, it's exciting to see those links. I realise I didn't change the slide. Thank you, Anna. She just sent me a note. So we know that, you know, the work at the University of the Arts London is kind of connecting with what's happening more broadly across the sector. It reminds me of a conversation we had this morning in one of the sessions I was in, where Zoe Broach from the RCA was talking about her approach to teaching, and yes, assessment and learning outcomes are part of the teaching, but they're not. She's not preoccupied by them. They're kind of adjacent to the work that she's doing in the teaching of fashion, or the teaching and learning of fashion. So, yeah, we know that even if we're working within this kind of systems adaptation space, we're still witnessing systemic barriers. We're witnessing barriers to the kind of radical adaptation, and therefore these are signs of the barriers that stop us from, you know, redesigning the fashion education system. Some of the barriers that we've noted through collaboration with teachers on different courses, through our own teaching, are the burden of assessment and marking, particularly relevant in the UK at the moment because there's been an assessment boycott, marking boycott in relation to the union. So the impact that then has when we try to resist some of that has an impact on student experience, obviously. So there's a tension there. We know that fashion tutors, and this has been raised today, are overworked and have very limited time, and that's another piece of research that came out of the Fashion Seeds project, which was that, you know, we interviewed fashion tutors from all over the world, and they all told us, from very, you know, a whole range of different educational institutions and settings, they all told us that they felt that they didn't have the time or the capacity to reflect on their own teaching practice. We know that there are gatekeepers. So there are different places within the education system, different people in different places that hold power to make change. How do we redistribute that power, and how do we overcome this idea of gatekeepers? Often we see that this work is slotted in to a course to tick a box. It might be through an industry collaboration, it might be through, you know, the work of one tutor in a team, but, you know, sometimes it's just kind of in one place within a course or within a programme. We know that there's a protectiveness over content, and that, again, this idea of the institution not valuing the people within its system, so that people feel under threat or feel that their own intellectual property is undervalued in some way. So again, that dynamic between the tutor and the institution is not sitting right. There's this reduction of everything to the economic, coming back to the themes that we've had today around efficiency, productivity, productiveness. How do we override that to create those spaces where those tensions can be parked? This kind of idea of not seeing how things fit, that sustainability is a process, not just a set of content, which is often a kind of conversation that emerges when we're working with colleagues around themes of sustainability in their teaching. And then this, leads to the kind of the complexity of issues that we're talking about, not just taking solutions-driven content, but reframing the notion of fashion, defashioning, so that we can understand the complexity, the historic nature of issues and causes of unsustainability, and taking an intersectional approach. We know that in our institution, the size and the structure of our university, how we work together and share ideas, communicate, get feedback, can often be a barrier. And this is kind of really evident in sometimes just a lack of physical space. So we've got a beautiful new building that we're moving into at London College of Fashion, but I'm already hearing stories of timetabling not getting it right, staff not having breaks, student experience being impacted because of the constraints on physical space. So we know that the university therefore becomes, or the fashion education experience we start measuring things around the quantifiables are maybe the things that we shouldn't be measuring, that we are kind of looking at these barriers and these constraints that are things that are defining what our teaching and learning should mean. So how do we name what matters and how can we count what counts? What are the fundamental values of a fashion education system that we want to see and we want to uphold? And there's loads of people writing in this space, and we've got a great kind of bibliography which we'll share with you at the end. But I suppose what we want to really kind of draw on is the idea that the values that we want to celebrate, the things that matter, that we want to count within current education systems, are misaligned with the performative demands of our neoliberal education systems. We want to find agency and the ability to challenge collectively the injustices and causes of unsustainability, and often we are constrained by the things that take up our time in education currently. So how can we go beyond business as usual, sustainability as usual? How can we make sure that we're not preoccupying ourselves with the adaptation model? So one of the, we've got some kind of amazing examples of projects that are trying to transcend that feeling and that relationship. One of the examples, for example, could be the idea of deep ecology and nature-centric perspectives. We're working on a project called Time in Nature, where we're framing for tutors what time in nature might look like as a pedagogic practice, and breaking it down into the idea of, what might be most accessible is learning in nature, but then what we might want to develop is the idea of learning with nature and ultimately for nature. So kind of finding kind of ways in which we can create the space within our current education system to have the conversations and to create the tools and the thinking and practice and the coming together where we can kind of collectively explore how we might reframe that and how we can kind of find these radical spaces within an existing system. As I said, we haven't got the answers. This is very much a work in process and a conversation between Anna and I, but we know that we want to identify new value systems as a starting point for going beyond sustainability as usual. We want to create spaces for personal and critical reflection that have ethical foundations. We want to promote ethical values such as social justice, equity, empathy, responsibility, and we want to help students to recognise the moral imperative of sustainability and the ethical dilemmas presented by unsustainable practices. So what does that look like? Does it look like a sense of belonging? Does it look like a just classroom? Does it look like walking pedagogies? Does it look like time in nature? What are the things that we can name and that we could count as the value systems that we want fashion education to have? So we open up the floor to you, and we are excited to hear from you to try and begin to name the things that we want to count that are challenging the sustainability as usual model. Thank you.
That is lovely, yeah, a whole day session. So, but I think it links very well, and some of the questions you're asking may have been answered by some of the things that have been shown, and vice versa. Any quick questions for clarification before we move on to the last presentation, and then open it up so that we can maybe draw our chairs back and sit next to each other without the tables, and yeah, pull this all together. I've got a few things that have kind of come up to the top in my mind. I'm sure a lot of people have got a lot of questions. So any quick questions for clarification? Or should we move on to the last one and then draw that back together? Yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Can we take a picture of that really quick?
Sharing all the presentations with each other, but I will check. Maybe I need to ask, I'll ask at the end. So,
Start the PowerPoint.
Yes, can I?
critical pulse.
Not
Thank you for keeping the energy. The last presentation with a critical
consider
pulse.
maybe on this.
That we're sitting down, like this.
Is that okay?
Always gonna be like this.
Started.
Oh, well, you stand up if you.
You started for me?
Am I?
Yeah.
That's why I get tired. I'm not good at sitting for this.
No, you present in whatever.
And then beginning.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
What is the?
Okay. People are not just sitting. Everyone is presented. How did that go?
Will you just, you can take a look at yourself.
I have no idea. Okay.
Sure. Yes, you can. I see. Start and I'll jump in when it's my. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. You can decide if I want. Okay. Yeah. So we are from the Critical Pulse, which is a critical fashion magazine that was started at the university that we come from, of some of the students, and then Kat as a mentor, basically.
We're from Denmark, so I'm a Canadian teaching in Denmark for 4 years now. Sandra that I've done the BA program and now starting the MA program in Denmark. We're in a small town about an hour north of Flensburg. So that's why it's the University of Southern Denmark. So we're nowhere near Copenhagen.
No.
I started teaching critical fashion studies and specifically a media course where I noticed that there was a missing platform for the voices that the research that was coming from the students that needed to be heard as the next generation, as the people who are most affected, as the people who have really important things to say. So that's why we decided to start a new platform that would include both young scholars, young researchers, starting their careers, thinking about their careers, rethinking their careers, but also expert voices. And so we're passing around display copies. This is an online magazine that is available for free. Our 7th issue launched this morning.
So do you want to say about the covers?
The covers, I don't know. Except that, well, I've made not the first two of them, but all the other covers over the course I've been studying. So basically, except from like bringing in articles and all the written stuff that the students are doing, we also like getting contributions like visuals and illustrations and photography, everything else that people are doing at their studies or in their free time that's just creative and critical and can be used in the magazine. I think that's a really important point as well, that it's not just about taking everything that's written, but kind of everything that people are doing. Yeah, and as Kat said, it's by students and for students, but also for everyone. So it's not like we always write the stuff that's in it. I'm the editor-in-chief now. I've been at the magazine for 2 years. So basically, we're more the facilitators of the magazine, putting it all together, but we're always looking for other people to contribute so we can get, as Kat said, all the voices of students and scholars out,
Yeah.
basically.
So it started with the idea that the essays that the students were writing in the media history and the theory courses really had something important to say, but had no place in academic publishing, non-academic publishing, for-profit media, and the fact that for-profit media is so highly censored and that there's no room for criticism of any kind, that there's nothing but greenwashing, really created a need for this kind of platform. And gradually, I think it's still a lot of work to kind of like get the readership, get this whole project off the ground. But I think it's slowly starting to find an audience, which is also really nice to see, and also a community of like-minded people who are really, really supportive of the magazine, including you, Sandra. Thank you for submitting one of the articles. So the Black issue, for example, is the activist issue. And so we have contributions from Sarah and Sandra and basically highlighting what is happening in fashion activism today. And again, bringing together experts, scholars, activists, researchers, but also young students who actually have something to contribute to that conversation but never get heard.
Yeah, and also also for the students to network and work together with all the scholars and professionals and stuff. I think that's a big part of it. For me as a student working on the magazine, it's also using the skills that we're learning at the university for something that's more practical and something that's being submitted out into the world that people can actually read, and meeting people and networking and reading other stuff. Like, for example, for some of the articles, then you have to translate it, you have to edit it, and you have to talk to the people who's written it and stuff. So there's this whole work process that goes into it that's really exciting to be a part of as a student. So it's not just like make your exam, submit the paper, and then just never look at this again because you got a grade and now it doesn't matter. So that it's actually being used for something. Yeah.
Okay, so just to properly introduce ourselves, I guess. So my work in fashion started while I was still in Canada, and I started the Canadian Fashion Scholars Network while I was there. Some people are actually here from Canada today, so that's really nice. And then when I moved to Europe, I connected with the Research Collective for Decolonizing Fashion. Was the old name of the collective at the time. Now it's Decoloniality and Fashion, and all of them are here as well. And then Fashion Act now kind of like became the next organization that I started reaching out to, and we have common publications both with Sandra and with Sarah. So it's been such a lovely day to actually meet everyone in person after years and years of collaborating online. I've been high on endorphins, just like I'm finally with my people, with all of the different people from all of the different continents. So that's been such a nice thing today. And thank you to Renate and Franziska for organizing and bringing us all together in person. So that's been the highlight of my day. But just to say a few things, I come from a background of cultural studies and media studies, and fashion became kind of like the most interesting, the most problematic
point of research for me when I was still a student. I was looking into how fashion is conducted, how fashion culture is developed in cities that are not traditional fashion capitals. And so out of that work came the book series on urban chic. The latest version came out this summer. So the latest book in the book series is about Copenhagen. And that's kind of like where I collaborated with Danish colleagues who have been thinking about sustainability, who have been thinking about how do we defashion things within the context of a particular place. So again, through this analysis of cities, culture, histories, scenes, but also industries, really building a holistic understanding that fashion is more than just the industry. So that there is a much larger legacy, heritage, culture to be examined, to be explored, to learn from, which sometimes is also forgotten because fashion history is no longer taught in design schools, unfortunately. So it's, in a way, a privilege to be able to study something that is very, very big and very complex, but also be able to say, yes, but there's more to this picture that we keep reducing to an economic commodity. There's one other way that I've been trying to think about fashion, and that is through education and how to basically transform education. And this was also a collaborative volume where both Sandra and Otto von Busch have an article on how to transform fashion education as well. So basically looking at how can we use tools like decoloniality, like intersectional feminisms, like social justice as methodologies, as practices to be able to transform not just fashion education, but education systems as a whole. Do you want to say a few words about your work?
As briefly mentioned in the beginning, I did my BA in design culture and economics in Denmark, which is basically not necessarily focused on fashion, but then I chose to focus on fashion. You can do that. And then I started my MA in studies and will still work on fashion. I think I'm the only one left from the fashion courses at the MA, and it's basically, I feel like a lot of the workshop I've been at today, there's a lot of people in the making fashion department, and this is more analytical and research, which is kind of interesting to me, like the way of working in different fields that I'm still studying fashion, even though, because every time I try to explain to people what I'm studying, they think, okay, you're a fashion designer, which is not what I'm doing, but then I try to explain to them what I'm doing. And I think it's important as well to maybe bridge some of those gaps and connect with fashion designers. We have been doing that a lot with the design school in Kolding, where our university is as well, like collaborating for the magazine, for example, interviewing them and asking them, the fashion designers, what they are doing, and then talking to them about what we are doing, and that way understanding each other. And then I work at an art museum. And just this summer, in August, I was a keynote speaker at something called Fashion Freedom Fest, which is basically an event that was started a couple of years ago. At first, it was called Men in Skirts. So the focus was basically men in skirts, and it was like an art exhibition, but where people came, and then the organizer brought a lot of skirts, and then men and other people could just try on skirts and be there, have fun, have drinks, have a conversation. And basically the guy who started it is Dylan, and he's actually an engineer. So in that sense, his education has nothing to do with fashion. He just started asking these questions himself. What would it be like if I wore a skirt, and stuff like that, and started this event. And then I did the keynote this year because my BA was on non-binary fashion. So it's pretty nice also to meet people like Dylan, who's kind of going into fashion, even though his education isn't fashion, because he has a lot of different points and views on it. And also he wants to know what I know, because I'm from the academic side, and he's like, well, I have no knowledge of that. I don't read all the theories, I just do what I feel like I should do and is the right thing to do. So that was also nice to kind of elaborate on that. And he actually asked me if I want to take over the Fashion Freedom Fest. So next year we'll do it together and organize it. Yeah. So hopefully I'll have some ideas from today that I can use.
Just a shout out to Dylan because he's a privileged white male academic who chooses to use any public speaking opportunity to wear a skirt, to disrupt the gender binary system,
basically.
just because he can. So,
because he wants to disrupt it. And he did a TEDx talk. He actually just received this. That's not because of the fashion stuff, but he just received a Peace Prize this weekend because his drone, he actually engineers drones and he doesn't want to make them for war. So that's why he got the Peace Prize. Yeah. So he's just a really cool person that we collaborate with. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about what we did at the magazine?
Yeah, briefly you can see like in the display covers, but basically we make articles and those are like the longer, bigger things in the magazines. And then we also have like reviews and interviews in between, which could be pretty much everything. It could be movies or books or podcasts, exhibitions, whatever people find is interesting and want to analyze and share their opinion of. And we have a blog post as well at the website. So that's basically what we use to just post whenever we find something interesting or whenever people have something they want to share that can't really wait for the magazine, because the magazine comes out 2 times a year, in September and in January. So basically everything that's current, we use a blog post for. And for example, as I said, working with the design school, we often make photo essays so we can show their work. So they have a platform to display their exhibitions and talk about them.
One of the design school graduates was actually here at a workshop today. Sophia, she has a Stitch and Bitch workshop, so we profiled her and
made a photo essay and an interview, I think,
And she does great work with upcycling dead stock materials, using them for weaving, and then creating new creative ideas with upcycled materials.
And basically the last part was just more like what we do at the magazine, the whole editing, writing, all of that stuff, the whole project management. That's a big part I learned from being at the magazine as a student. Project management, like having all these different roles and having to put all this stuff together. But I feel like it's quite nice to have that skill while going further on into the MA, and when I'm done studying and I have to go out to the work field, that I know how to project manage and use my time. Yeah, so these are just like examples of the different things that are in the magazine. Photo essays, blog posts, reviews.
Right, so can we, we just get
I said most of what we had to say, and of course, this is like a call for you guys to contribute, or if you have students that want to contribute, let them know, because we want everyone to like send us stuff and get in touch. I'm the contact person for the magazine, so if they email, it'll be me answering them.
Great. And it's the last one, rather than get clarification questions, then because we've all been sitting here like this for a little while, and thank you, I know it's not easy to wait, and then the last presenters, can I suggest that everybody stands up for a sec and grab a cup of water if you want to.
No.
We haven't got that much time, but just, get back into your bodies, and then we can move the chairs back from the table and have a conversation together and just let that conversation flow. We've got about 20 minutes before we then have to move off. I know there's been a lot to kind of, to hear and share, but hopefully there's a lot of things that have crossed over. But 2 minutes for a little glass of milk, and let's pull it all together and decide what the multilog has helped us to do.
I have all the same frustrations. I'm a finishing my PhD.
Oh wow!
And I'm like,
I know.
why did I?
Yeah, welcome to the family.
We should connect because I feel like Margaret. And I'm a physicist about profession universe and anthropology.
Are we still on
I'm sort of fan, and I immersed objects.
Okay.
It's good. Fashion Evolution, I did a lot now. I think really, really immersive.
Okay, so I'm also aware that everybody fine, so stick with us and listen to the conversation. Sit down again, just because if we don't do that, we'll suddenly run out of time.
So, and but you are doing teachings as well?
No, well, I will be teaching, actually, I'm gonna be teaching a class.
Yeah, well, yeah.
There's a term called classe populaire. All the.
Okay, so I've got various things and thoughts that have come that I can crossing from presentations.
Sorry, this is my first like real teaching experience.
Yeah,
it's
nice.
Thursday.
Thursday already.
Sorry.
Oh, are we?
And I think there's lots of different ways the conversation can go, and I'm very happy to open it up, but I thought just to kind of start the conversation, it might be useful to share some of the words that I have written down from the presentations, and these are the ones that kind of came up through 3 or 4 presentations. First one actually is about resistance in 2 dimensions. One, the need for resistance, and the other is the resistance to the work that we're now doing. And what kind of position that puts us in. And I think there's a lot that could be said around that. Reciprocation and sharing, and the fact that we're all here and have done all this work and have been really open about it. And that's not easy. You know, in our institutions, we're expected to keep things behind closed doors and not share our teaching, and institutions are in competition. So I think that thing of reciprocation, I just want to acknowledge how wonderful and rare that is. Embodied practice, situated practice, and the fact that as tutors we quite often are expected to be in a classroom, and yet actually situated practice and embodying the practice of sustainability, we've seen examples, changes things dramatically. So what does that mean for us as educators? Unlearning. Yeah, so we're all, I think, nearly all of us affiliated to or working in institutions. So how can the multilog help us to consider this aspect of unlearning? And finally, although there are other words, but I think finally the thing that really came out was this idea of emotion, emotion in our work and emotion in the students. This is really difficult work. And how we can support each other, and how we can deal with the fact that it is something that is felt. It's not theoretical, where it draws on theories, it's concepts and ideas, but it's actually really felt. It's the stuff that's felt. So those are the things that I kind of found to be a red thread between all the presentations, and I sort of just offer it just as a starting point. Who wants to either offer a thought, question, or reflection? Yeah.
Is it me or is it?
Oh, you go.
Oh, okay. I think, so another dimension of the reciprocity that you're speaking about, to me, it really, it's not, maybe reciprocity isn't the same word, but sort of opening up these really closed off systems, right? Even, you know, the traditional power schema, I never know how to say the word, between the teachers and the students. I found the presentations today really breaking through that barrier, and that's incredible to see. And that's not only dismantling fashion education, that's dismantling education in general, right? Breaking through and really treating students, you know, with respect and valuing their ideas. And that's how people leave the classroom and do things like, you know, where'd she go? What the last, you know, your student is doing, and that's incredible. It's a huge start to her career, and she's building so many skills. I mean, that's how you get people passionate and keep them involved and keep these processes building. So I think that's just incredible. Yeah, that's my comment for the moment. I might have more to say later.
Zoe, you had to say.
Yes, I really resonate with what everybody says, and I think it all feeds into work that I'm trying to do with students and work that other people are doing and involved in various bits and bobs, and what you're trying to do, transform an institution into an institution of transformative education. It's incredibly difficult, and I just wanted to share something because I'm actually feeling quite sad today because I recently did an MA in ecological design thinking at Schumacher College in Devon at Dartington, which is an incredibly transformative institution, and it's well known for that. And I did it whilst working full time, running multiple fashion programs as a director of programs at a small institution. And I had a year doing that whilst working full time, trying to redesign and transform my own fashion education practice. And it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. It was the most amazing place. It was truly transformative. It changed my life. I've almost left fashion education. I'm trying to work as a practitioner on the ground to actually do things. I've moved where I live. I've sold my house. I mean, honestly, everything's happened in the year since, and it was a real catalyst for change. But we found out today that they've cancelled all the courses there. They're shutting it down, and it's just like, oh my goodness, because it doesn't fit within the financial system. And Dartington has lost its arts funding. And so the first thing the trustees are going for is to shut down the transformative education courses. And I just wanted to bring that up because it's not that we shouldn't stop doing this, and I don't know if ultimately Schumacher will survive and they'll rebuild because they actually have got philanthropic support and they may find a way to sort of group and rebuild. But I just wanted to put it out there is that, that's potentially that's been going for like 20, 30 years. That's a beacon of transformative education, and the pressures of the existing capitalist system have borne down on it. And it's just really difficult. It's really hard. And I just wanted to put that out there, not to be negative, but it will rebuild and we will all rebuild from the ashes, but you've got to be really, really strong. You've got to be so strong.
And the more...
we've got to build that resilience, like you say. I just resonate with everything. I love the idea of the fashion walks because it's just like, actually, taking a student for 8 hours and walk, they don't do that. They're pathetic. They won't even walk up. Sorry. But they won't walk. They're like, oh, it's a 15-minute walk to college. It's just like, come on. I just think that's amazing because we need to build resilience in everybody for what's coming. Sorry.
No, I think it's really important. Sophie, you wanted to...
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's, I think that very first comment I made is that the institution isn't just this monolithic thing that we're against or we're for. We're not like, and I really, really struggle with the binary of, senior management do this and, and then we're, and it's just like, that's not complexity. That's not what is actually really happening. So, and I do think there is room within these structures to do things like an 8-hour walk. And that's kind of what I think we have to just grab it. We can do these things within the neoliberal education model. There are pockets of resistance, and so let's do it.
Anybody want to respond to that? And
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I just had thoughts about that. We do not have so many conversations about different educational systems and what it causes the educators to act or not act within. And this reflects too in the publications we have because people are trying to resist and trying to be resilient, but sometimes it's a quite limited view what education system we're discussing. So I was working, for example, in Cairo for a while, as I shared with you, and I'm within this space of public and private universities. In my mind, I really thought just that I have total opposite struggles. Like I'm not work for a private institution, but it's very hard to convene anyone in these public universities, mostly the smaller ones, that things should change. It not even crossed their mind or something. There's this sometimes it's so lost that you come there and you ask for a job and then you do things differently. Like for example, you don't teach fashion history as they want to. And you have big discussions, and after 1 year, they just fire you because they want to have back So there's a classist moment in this suggesting new content, but at the same time, how to convey people that don't want to be conveyed. They just want to stay silent, because in German you have this idea of becoming a professor for lifetime, and they just want to keep they want to be okay with like having regular vacation, and to work from a classist point of view within those structures and suggesting to them sustainability and decoloniality on multiple levels is just like you're killing again your job. And it's hard to kind of have finance life still.
Is there a similar thing where these big institutions are basically built on fossil fuels and built on intellectual superiority and discrimination? But what about the small e then? How can we grow the small e? Sorry,
No. You go.
I go? Okay, so because it's maybe, adding to this, because, for example, from the HTW, the university where we work, I know that we have 200 professorships and 600 lectureships. So you have 200 positions which are very well paid and 600 positions which are very badly paid. Yeah, but the whole amount is constructing the topics which are conveyed or educated. So, yeah, I don't have to say more to that, I think. Yeah, but another thing that I wanted to discuss is that I'm really concerned about the responsibility that we have while teaching fashion. For example, our generation was very much pushed into self-employance after having studied fashion design. It was a political will to push us into freelance and self-employed micro-enterprise solo fighters, yeah. And we were all pushed into Existenzgründungsprogramme and however they are called. And it actually does not work for different reasons. One reason is the tax system and the bureaucracy we have, and which doesn't fit at all to this work reality. So a lot of graduates step into this work reality where they put their best years and all their energy in setting up a fashion label, for example, just to notice after 10 or 15 years that they will not be successful.
Or only privilege is successful.
Yes.
And this is
Or
really
only,
weird, because nobody talks about that. And this gets even reproduced in the teaching system, because to gain a professorship, I need to show the work I've done. So can I offer to have my oeuvre? I've seen, sometimes I look at those places where professors are kind of like the committee, and you look at the work, and then it came to me, I basically just see money and privilege sometimes when I see the oeuvre of people applying for professorships. And this is really touching, because when you compare it to several people and what it was really weird to understand how should anyone that is not privileged compete in this system with this kind of oeuvre to start to be part of the conversation. Yeah, but maybe we should.
But what I actually wanted to say is that I am concerned about that if we now implement the degrowth in our lectures and we encourage students to focus on degrowing, yeah, and the working reality outside there does not fit to that, and we push them into existence. Yeah, I'm just questioning that what is good for nature may be very dangerous to an individual existence, and how can we, analog to the fashion education, build up a really strong political movement or a lobby which is actually heard at the government and really constructs laws that fit to these aims.
Yeah, because if we're encouraging students towards something that the world is resisting, then we're actually encouraging them towards something that they're not going to be able to succeed in.
Yeah.
So,
and I want to be innovative, and I want to be future-warded, but I don't want to be careless. Yeah.
So you've got to, we have to.
If you keep pushing them towards it, then you're just perpetuating it.
Yeah.
You're part of.
So as educators, do we also have to be political activists? How does that work? You were going to speak.
Exactly what I was going to say. Well, as a member of lots of things, as a member of FAN, I was going to speak to it, and as a member as somebody who's dedicated my life to Indigenous systems and Indigenous systems thinking in my practice as a designer, as an educator, and as a researcher, and as a social entrepreneur. But I want to speak specifically to one point. My students, I presented this morning on an Indigenous systems framework that is radicalizing business and education, business and entrepreneurship mindsets from high school level in order to shift the paradigm of university thinkers to create intrinsically purpose-driven individuals into society. And there are ways, and you know, Sandra pointed this out very, very much so in her talk this morning. The ways are to look beyond, and yes, there's all of these issues, because students ask me these issues because in this system of how we teach, these are the provocations that we can have. This is the conversation, the korero that we can actually have. It's very blurry who's the student and who's the teacher. Sometimes that is incredibly scary, incredibly liberating, but I am a rarity because I'm okay to not have any power in this situation. But what came out from this type of conversation in 5 schools with just under 2,000 students, about 1,998, so 2,000 students, was education, and the education we want as the child, so me speaking as the student, the education we want and is one that's free of hierarchy. So my international students, predominantly Vietnamese in this particular cohort, do not want to have to come to Aotearoa and spend 40K. Why? So they want a system that's free of the hierarchy. They want to be in institutions that is free of the hierarchy. And they believe that if all of us in the world, and this is something that Sandra, I think we had talked about this in FAN, like if we all the educators in the world decide collectively that we are going to be so radical that we are going to kind of make some kind of declaration, some kind of petition of sorts, some really radical
manifesto.
Stand, yeah. No, not even, it's beyond a manifesto. It's a stand, and it's a stand that happens. It's an action that happens sort of immediately. Students will rally behind it. Students will, because these are the students that are in the climate marches on every Friday, and they still are, and they still get straight A's, and they are like, we don't care about the straight A's. We want to see the action. We know that our teachers are overworked. We know that you guys aren't getting paid. We know and we love you and we're thankful. But now, what can we do to change all of that? It's not just you guys striking in a little pocket for 500K, like, you know, for $500 more a month, because that's not going to work. Or not that we, you know, you're doing this incredible stuff, we learn in this beautiful way, but guess what? One of your biggest issues, and I've just had this horrible meeting before getting on a plane, one of your biggest issues is you still liable, Ms. K, for our 14 credits for us to pass your course for me to get into university. So why don't you guys all get together and sign a pact, and we will stand with you, because we believe in having a radical, hierarchy-free, multiple wisdom education. So they want that. And if the kids are saying that, why can't we? What do we do to give them that? What do we do? This is, and there is a power in numbers. And yes, I'm a grassroots activist and think that teaching is activism, but what can we do? What can we do today from this position that we're in right now? I mean, it's fantastic to be here, the greatest minds in our industry.
Greatest minds in our education system.
That's what I mean.
This is the first time that we've been able to gather this number of educators from this many places actually together in a room. So maybe, the question is, what can the multi-log do? So which is going to be my sort of closing.
This is my question.
What do you want the multi-log as a group, as a network, to do next?
This is my question. This is what, and it's actually the question that I brought from the students.
Hallelujah.
So
I like it.
I do have some ideas, but there's a student, I think.
I'm a student and part of the team, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're telling us we've got to move on you.
To maybe move this like you have a small walk to the next location and you can continue this conversation. It was very interesting and lovely. So sorry to.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Time, isn't it?
Time, my issue is a linear method of time.
But also maybe.
Please continue these conversations beyond here. You don't need us to be all together in a room. We're going to be but I want to take that question back tomorrow when we're at